We've talked a lot about climate change, but perhaps up until this point, you may still not be convinced. So let's talk about evidence that we have that kind of proves that there is a significant climate change happening and that it is kind of primarily due to human interactions. It's important to note, however, that no one single climate event or one single study can definitely prove climate change, but the aggregate of all these observations and all these studies and all this evidence does allow us to make conclusions. So, saying, oh, it's really hot today or it's really cold today is not great evidence of climate change, but saying over the past X number of years, it has been getting hotter is a better way to kind of describe climate change, because there are hot days and cold days, but it's important to kind of analyze the pattern and how it is relative to previous years. So the first and foremost is the rising temperature. Weather stations have recorded daily temperatures since the late 1800s. And what we're noticing is average global temperatures have been increasing. It's important to note, though, that warming is not evenly distributed all over the globe. Canada's average temperature increase has been about 1 degree in the last 55 years, but by as much as 2.5 degrees in some parts of the Yukon. So even within a relatively close distance, and we're talking within a country, there are significant changes in temperature change. We've also been able to track melting glaciers. So here we have an image of an ice shelf kind of shrinking. The average size of glaciers has begun to decrease. This is important as they are a source of drinking water for nearly half the people around the world. Melting can cause serious freshwater shortages. We see the ice sheets in Greenland and Antarctica are disappearing. Arctic ice is also disappearing. So this has an effect on, life, not necessarily humans, but animals or plants in that area. Just to give you a little bit of a definition here, an ice sheet is when we have ice on land. When the ice on the land melts, it floats into the water, and then of course that will cause an increase in sea level. Whereas sea ice is ice that is already floating on the water. We just talked about rising sea level, and small increases in sea level can result in floods for low-lying countries, places where the altitude above sea level is not very high. And sea level rises are caused by glacier and ice sheet melting, which we just discussed, and as well as thermal expansion, the idea that water expands slightly when it warms up, and as it warms up more, it will expand more. Over time, we've also seen these changes in severe weather, precipitation, and ecosystems. So severe weather is, the increased intensity and frequency of severe weather events, such as heat waves and hurricanes. We've seen the number of Category 4 or 5, which are very intense hurricanes, double over the last 40 years. In terms of precipitation, we've seen much more heavy precipitation events, rain and snow. And then on the flip side, we've seen more droughts in other areas, so areas that are not getting enough precipitation, not enough rain. So we're seeing areas get too much rain and areas get not enough. We've also seen changes in ecosystems. Plants and animals respond to changes in temperature and precipitation. We've seen earlier flowering of plants and earlier breeding of certain species. We're seeing insects and plants that may not be desirable migrate north. This has a more profound effect on those ecosystems because these might be insects that don't have natural predators and therefore might devastate a local ecosystem. So all of these ideas together, whether it be the rising temperatures, the melting of the ice sheets, the rising sea level, or severe weather changes, severely increased or decreased precipitation, and then changes in local ecosystems, altogether, these provide pretty good evidence of significant climate change.